So we're going to be in Revelation 17 this evening. And I'm going to start tonight with a confess your faults one to another moment. I really thought we were going to be able to do Revelation chapter 17 and 18 like in 2 Wednesdays at the absolute most. Because Revelation chapter 17 and 18 are basically a recapitulation of everything we've seen. But there's so much information in these 2 chapters. We've already spent 2 Wednesdays on it. We're going to spend a third. We're not going to rush through it. This outline is an expansion of the one I handed out last week. So if you got the one last week, this outline has new information. And we'll go through it at the pace that God dictates. I do think we will finish 17 tonight. If we go through it really fast, we might do a high-level overview of chapter 18 and then finish. We should be able to finish chapter 18 next week. Even though theoretically everything or almost everything in these 2 chapters we've seen before, this is all a completely different perspective. This is really God's perspective on world history and on the judgment of the world. So it's worth our time. It's worth our time to think about carefully. It's worth our time to discuss. As always, the hope is that this is a discussion. As you guys have thoughts or questions, I'd like to hear them. Please pipe up. That's really what makes this special. And in many ways, this is my favorite service of the week because I really enjoy discussing this with you guys. So let's ask God's blessing and we'll get started. Lord, thank you so much for this night that you've given us. Thank you for your word. Bless us now and help us to understand it as much as it is your will for us too. Lord, I pray that you would help us to have humility in the areas where we cannot be certain, but above all, help us to have conviction, a deep sense of our belonging in you, and a sure knowledge of your victory over the world. God, use this time to arm us against worldliness. Help us to follow you, and use this to strengthen us emotionally, intellectually, and in our actions. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so last week we spent a considerable, basically all the time, discussing this woman called Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots and of abominations on the earth. And if you remember last week, after discussing different options, we came to the conclusion that this woman symbolizes the world system. And by the world system, what I mean is a kind of underlying current, a way of doing things that started at Babel, and really before that, where mankind decides to go their own way, to defy God, and to try to either work their way to heaven or set themselves up as gods. Have you ever felt like there's something wrong in the world? Like there's just something wrong? And you can't quite put your finger on it, but you know that there's something wrong? That's what the world system is. The world system is this underlying current of wickedness that touches everything in all cultures and gears all of mankind towards the direction of defying God and setting ourselves up as God's lowercase g. Mystery Babylon is a personification of that. And we saw last time, perhaps one of the most important things about this, it's not surprising that she's personified because the church is also personified. By personified, what that means is they're put in the form of a person. They're made to be like people. And so the world system, mainstream humanity, we might say that, mainstream humanity does things a certain way, and that's Mystery Babylon. And what do you guys remember from last week? What's Mystery Babylon like? What is this lady like? I use the term lady very loosely. What is she like? Sin, very, very sinful, right? Say again? Yeah, aggressive. Blood drunk. She is drunk on the blood of the saints and the martyrs. She rides the beast. The beast we understand to be the Antichrist, and we're going to spend more time talking about that. What else do you guys remember? She's described a lot. I'm going to use the word, we're going to use the word harlot tonight. She's repeatedly described as a harlot. And if you remember, that makes us think about Old Testament examples of false worship or idolatry, where physical immorality and unfaithfulness is a picture of false worship. But also, critically, very often it goes together. If you lived in the world of the Old Testament or in the world of the New Testament, when you went to worship your God, lowercase g, almost always it would involve acts of physical immorality. That was something they did all the time. And it's not that uncommon today, right? We worship other things in our modern age, and they also have acts of physical immorality involved. So, this idea of unfaithfulness. Anything else about the woman that you guys remember? The world system? We're going to talk about it in detail. Yeah. Yeah, rich. Rich and attractive. Yes. Yes. And that's one of the ways, so Paula points out she's the mother of harlotry, the mother of harlots. That's one of the ways that we understand that this is more than just like one person or one city or one thing. This is the underlying source of wickedness wherever it pops up. So let's look. We spent a lot of time in the first 6 verses last week, so let's start with verse 7. Revelation chapter 17, verse 7. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her. Remember, the woman rides on the beast. And we understand the beast to be the Antichrist. So the woman riding on the Antichrist, the idea is, for a time at least, the world system, kind of popular humanity, mainstream culture, we could say it that way, is lifted up and strengthened and carried along by the Antichrist. When the Antichrist first comes on the scene, all human ambition and everything that we do is going to seem absolutely awesome. We're going to be as strong and as fast and as high on the hog as we have ever been. We are going to be carried along by the Antichrist. So, I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. We're going to talk about the heads and the horns. Verse 8 is going to describe the beast in some detail. Would somebody like to read that for us? Revelation 17:8. Okay. Just go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, so the wondering here, this is like the sense of admiration, like, wow, isn't the beast amazing? Isn't he remarkable? Who else could be like the beast? And when we see this, like he was and he is not, or he was and he is not and he is, we should be, this is kind of like a mockery of some of the statements we've seen about God, but probably what it describes most is during the earthly reign of the Antichrist, at some point he is going to either appear to die or really die, and to be something like resurrected. And when he's resurrected, everybody's going to shout, it's Jesus, or something like Jesus. And he's going to play along with that, because the Antichrist is first and foremost a counterfeit Jesus. So that's what people marvel at. Now, what kind of people marvel at the beast? Is everybody super impressed with the beast? Yeah, the lost are super impressed with the beast, and that's important. We're going to discuss that in more detail, but first we need to talk about the 7 heads. In verse 9, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, no, does anybody have an alternative translation on that one? Marvel. Yeah, this isn't wonder in the sense of I wonder. This is wonder. We use the word a lot of different ways, right? This is wonder like, wow, that's wonderful. They're going to be so impressed by the beast. They're going to be astonished by the beast. So they're not questioning, they're super impressed by it. They think it's really neat. So that's the sense in which they're wondering. So let's talk about the beast in more detail in verse 9. And here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay, so let's talk about this. Has anybody maybe gone through this or studied this or been taught this before? What are the 7 mountains? The 7 mountains. That's what I think, but there are alternative views. Let me start by sharing what I think, and then we'll talk about some alternative views. Sometimes in the Old Testament, mountain or hill is used to symbolize kingdoms, and I give you references there you can look up. Probably the 7 mountains are 7 successive kingdoms or governments that are like expressions of the Antichrist. The idea is that there are times when the power of the Antichrist comes through especially clear in the world. Have we, almost in contemporary times, or even in contemporary times, have we seen, are there states where the power of the Antichrist is just coming through at high fidelity? Like what kind of states? I wasn't thinking that, but okay. I was thinking more North Korea. If you've ever watched people do a praise and worship service of Kim Jong-un, like that, like we'll leave California on the side there, but like you go on YouTube and learn about North Korea. Like watch people praise and worship Kim Jong-un. Watch people lay flowers at the enormous image of Kim Jong-un. It looks that's not Kim Jong-un, that would be Kim Jong-il. It looks a whole lot like what's being described in Revelation. Other times in world history, the power comes through especially clearly. And probably these 7 mountains, the 7 heads, are 7 successive states or kingdoms. Now, some other views worth mentioning. Some people have thought that the 7 heads were 7 Roman emperors. And other people, especially people that want to connect the woman with the Roman Catholic Church, think that the 7 mountains are the 7 hills that the city of Rome is on. My answer to both of those is that John's whole vision is worldwide. John's vision is very big. And anytime we try to take this and make it just one specific thing, it's not going to work. Whatever the woman is, she sits on many waters, that is, she touches all nations. That can't be the Roman Empire. It can't even be the Roman Catholic Church. It has to be a lot bigger. In the history of Christianity, we, Baptists, have been called the woman or the beast. Catholics are frequently called the woman or the beast. People that go to church on Sunday are frequently called the woman or the beast, or going to church on Sunday is sometimes called taking the mark of the beast. Muslims are frequently called the woman or the beast. Mormonism, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with any of those, but the point is, a lot of people have kind of interpreted the thing that they don't like into the slot of the woman or the beast. But whatever John is describing is a huge worldwide thing. It can't just be one specific thing that you agree with or disagree, or that you disagree with. So the 7 heads are 7 states. The 7 kings are 7 rulers or dynasties, each leading its empire. Look at what John describes in verse 10. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen. Okay, so 7 kings. 5 are gone. 1 currently is, and 1 is to come. Now, the easiest one is going to be the one that is. Who's king? And you don't have to give me the specific one, but who's king of the world that John knows? Yeah, and specifically the king of the Roman Empire, the Caesar of Rome. The Roman emperor is the one that is. The 5 that came before are 7 other rulers where the power of Antichrist was coming through especially clearly. But there's 1 to come, and that 1 to come is the beast, the one that's being described. Now, while the beast is on the earth, notice, by the way, in verse 10, I'm telling you the last one, the one that is not yet, is the beast, the Antichrist. How long does he go for? Well, yeah, we know that. But look at what John says in verse 10. Just a little while. The power of the Antichrist is really just for a little while. And now what's going on in verse 11 is pretty interesting. The beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is one of the 7, and goes into perdition. Okay, so this is, if it's not complicated, it's going to get complicated now. So the beast, the Antichrist, is the ruler that comes after the 7th, but he's also of the 7th. So how does that work? He's of the 7, and he's the 7th, but he's also the 8th. It's like there's a big thing that happens in the middle of his reign, and it's almost like he's 2 different people. And there are a lot of things that could explain this, but in my mind, the clearest explanation is whatever causes him to appear to be resurrected. So he's the seventh king. Things are going great. He's ruling the world. Then whatever happens, happens. And it looks like he dies and is resurrected. And when he comes back, in some ways, he's like a completely different person. And now he's the eighth. That's my interpretation of that. But again, here is the mind that has wisdom. This is meant to be complicated or difficult until it actually happens. Verse 12, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as of yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Hour here in verse 12 is not necessarily 60 minutes. That word can mean a short time span. And what's being described here, while the Antichrist is in power during those 7 years, there will be 10 great rulers of the earth. It's not clear how this is going to happen, but somehow the world is going to be divided into 10 superstates, 10 really big countries. And they are going to be united in their obedience, their allegiance to the Antichrist. In fact, look in verse 13. How united are they going to be? Of one mind. They're going to be absolutely united. So what's being described here is a world made up of 10 giant countries. Right now there are about 250 countries on the earth. That's all going to be consolidated into 10 really big countries. All of those 10 countries are going to be absolutely pledged, united to the Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to rule the world for 7 years. Something is going to happen, probably about halfway through that time, where it's like he's a completely different person. And after that, he's really going, if I can say it this way, he's going to go crazy. What we're going to see happen eventually is the Antichrist is going to turn his power on the people of the world, even on his own subjects. And so the way that the Soviet Union engineered famines to kill their own people, when Germany was collapsing during World War II, Hitler gave orders to German generals to essentially destroy German cities, destroy everything and kill everybody. Now, a lot of those generals at that point had no reason to do that, and so they didn't. But the point is that these especially wicked people have a way of turning on their own. And that's what's going to happen too. We're going to see that. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. We have this unholy alliance of the 10 kings and the Antichrist. And look in verse 14. Verse 14 is really coming to the point here. Would somebody read that for us? Verse 14. All right, lots of good stuff here. So who are the they? These shall make war with the Lamb. Those are the world, essentially the world government, the world system, the 10 kings, the Antichrist, all coming together to make war with the Lamb. We understand the Lamb is Jesus, right? We've been there. The Lamb is Jesus. They're going to make war with Jesus. Who's going to win? Jesus. Jesus is going to win. And that's something you can take home. It's very simple, but it's very powerful. Jesus is going to beat the combined power of the world. Has humanity ever really come together to do anything? Like, have we ever really been of one mind? Well, there's maybe one example. Yeah, Babel. And when we think about the world coming together with one mind, we should absolutely be thinking about Babel. Because that's what the world system is. Humanity coming together to defy God. And so the project that began at Babel is completed here when they come together with one mind to make war on the Lamb. From Babel to here, you have a straight line. But the Lamb wins. Jesus overcomes. Notice the Trinitarian formula. What's Jesus called in verse 14? Lamb, 1. King of Kings, 3. When I say Trinitarian formula, a lot of times in descriptions of God, you have series of 3s because God is 3 persons and 1 being. And here it's all Jesus. But again, King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and also the Lamb. And do you notice the formula on the saints? What are they called? The people of God? What are the 3 that they're called? Called, chosen, and faithful. So this is the first point John is making. All of these wild things are going to happen. The Antichrist is going to unite the world. The project of Babel is going to come to its hideous strength here. They're going to make war. The world system, if I can say popular culture, but even that is too simple. Human culture, the way we do things, the world system is going to come together against Jesus, and it's going to lose. Chapter 19 is the battle where that happens. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. But first, before the world system comes together, it's going to start to devour, well, the sinners are going to start to devour each other. Look in we saw verse 14. Verse 15 describes the woman more. The waters which thou sawest, where the harlot sits, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Again, whatever the woman is, a lot of people said, oh, the woman is the Roman Catholic Church or Seventh-day Adventists. The woman is people that go to church on Sunday. Or Christians in the Middle Ages said, oh, the woman is the Mormons. Not the Mormons, they didn't exist yet. Muslims. Whatever the woman is, it is a huge transnational thing. It's all over the world. It's not just one particular group of people. So look what happens. Look with me at what happens in verse 16. The 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast. Okay, what did we say the 10 horns were? 10. Yeah, 10 nations. 10 superstates. 10 really big countries. No, we do not. We do not. And frankly, most of the speculations have been proven wrong. When the UN started, and a few times in the history of the UN, there were like 10 important divisions. And then things change in the UN, and it's like, oh, is that really it? Who knows? In my mind, the speculations about what the 10 countries are tend to miss the point. When it happens, we'll know, but we also won't be there. Look in verses 16 and 17. The 10 horns, so that the world system, which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the harlot, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. That is very surprising, at least for a foolish person. Because where did this start? What was the harlot? And we're using the term harlot here for little ears. What is the harlot? How does she start this chapter? Yeah, she's riding the beast. And now things have changed. The beast has turned on her. And this illustrates a few things. From a world history perspective, it is not uncommon for evil leaders to turn on their own people. That happens all the time. It's also very, very common for sinners to turn on each other. That happens all the time. At some point during the Antichrist's reign, he is going to use the combined power of the 10 nations to start to destroy human culture. And this is really interesting because in addition to all of the divine judgments coming upon the earth, the whole power of the Antichrist military is going to be bent towards hurting and punishing humanity. And that's why chapter 12 said the devil is coming to earth and he has great wrath. The Antichrist government will be the ultimate tyrannical government. Everything else, Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, Maoist China, North Korea, they're all just sort of dress rehearsals for this that's coming. The Antichrist government is going to be as scary for the people on earth, perhaps, as the judgments of God coming from heaven. So the woman is going to be devoured by the beast. Why does this happen? Yeah, look in verse 17. Would somebody read that for us, verse 17? Okay, so God is working through sinners. And this happens a lot in the Old Testament. God uses sinners to judge sinners. You have two wicked nations, and God's judgment is just that he points them at each other and has them go to war. That happens a lot in the Old Testament. Here we see God's sovereign power at work. God is turning the power of the Antichrist, kind of the elites of the world, the military of the world, against the world system, which is general human culture and the human population. God is turning sinners against sinners. Yep, yeah, that's true. Even though the 10 states all agree to give power to the beast, they still are not completely under his control, right? Until they're dead. Paula?
I also think of too that we were created in God's image, right there in the garden. And Satan is out to destroy us because we are created in God's image, and the sinners are, well, they've been turned over by choice to Satan, to worship Satan. And maybe he's going to use that to turn against the other sinners because he hates mankind.
Yes.
Created in God's image.
Yep. Paula makes a good point. Mankind is created in God's image, and Satan, above all, hates us for being created in God's image. This is an important thing to understand. The reason why, it's fair to say, the reason why Satan does anything in your life is because he hates you. Why does he tempt you to sin? Because he hates you. Why does he make it possible for you to sin and for it to feel good for like 5 minutes? Because he hates you. His ultimate will for your life is to destroy you. Misery loves company.
Do you think that, like, the turning of the beast onto the world system is also, I agree with Paula on the fact, like, we're made in God's image, so ultimately Satan just hates us regardless, and, like, realizes that, but then also, like, almost like the realization that, like, he's not going to win, and so he's like, better burn the whole ship down and we can all go down together.
Yeah. It's hard to say, it's hard to really understand what's going on in the mind of Satan, but it could be sort of a scorched earth thing where he knows that he's not going to win.
Right,
and
so we'll all burn.
Yeah, he would rather burn the place down than lose. That's certainly a possibility. It's also possible that even Satan is not in fact, I know it's more than possible. We know that Satan is not entirely rational. Remember we saw that, like, the people on earth, even though they are confronted with the absolute undeniable evidence of God, and even though they know it's of God, they refuse to ask God to help them. And you think, oh, what crazy lunatics. There's no reason to think that Satan is any better off. And even though he's probably smarter than us, in like an IQ test concept, he's not going to behave rationally all the time. And sometimes he's just going to be driven by hatred. Just a pure, black, ugly malice, a desire to see people suffer. So it's not at all surprising that he does things like this. And so that is the end of Babel. And that's a really interesting thing. Babel started, the project of human defiance started when mankind turned against God and arrayed itself against God. And here, ultimately, the project of Babel is destroyed by Satan. God uses Satan to destroy the project of Babel, to utterly break the world system. That's the futility of sin. So let's talk about some application, some conclusion. I have 3 here. We're going to talk through these, but before I do, what are your guys' thoughts on conclusions? What is this amazing drama of the beast and the scarlet woman? What does it mean for us? Why is this in the Bible?
Don't have rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, understand, 1, the world is really ugly, and 2, the world is going to be sort of going to destroy itself or be destroyed by Satan. So we need to understand that. We need to have perspective on that.
Too, I think it's pretty obvious that we're headed toward a one-world economic system and probably a one-world governing system, and you can just kind of look out and see things happening toward that end right now.
Yes. We should not be surprised. We should not be surprised to see the world uniting, because that's what the world is going to do until the end. But critically, what is verse 14? Verse 14 tells us how to feel about it. How do you feel about the world uniting? It's kind of an ugly, icky feeling, right? If we're being honest. But verse 14 helps us to understand how we should feel. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. for he is King of kings and Lord of lords, and they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. We should be at peace. But we should also be grieving and trying to see the lost be saved. Because if they come together, there's no stopping them until they're destroyed. So a lot of times Christians live in fear. A lot of times Christians are obsessed with the world system and the Antichrist as Satan wants them to be. That's not our attitude. Our attitude is just to recognize, yep, this is going to happen. People are going to be drawn together. They're going to naturally work against God until God destroys them. That's going to happen. What are some other applications? Some things we can take away from this? Do you notice how ugly the woman is? Like blood drunk and riding a beast and just gaudy and sick. But what's the thing about harlots? They attract people, right? So in the one sense, she's very ugly, but on the other sense, she's kind of attractive in a sick way. What does that say about sin?
Ugly and attractive.
Yeah. Attractive for about 5 minutes, ugly forever. Paula?
I think it may be beautiful on the outside, but just deadly poison on the inside. Just rotten.
Yeah. And if we're biblically literate, we should be thinking about the strange woman in Proverbs. The strange woman in Proverbs does exactly the same sorts of things. And do you remember what the strange woman in Proverbs counter is? Who's the strange woman in Proverbs' enemy? You guys remember? There are two women in Proverbs. No. Yes. Well, she's good too. Proverbs 31, woman good. Wisdom. Yeah, Lady Wisdom. So in Proverbs, in the early chapters, you have the strange woman and Lady Wisdom. And they look a lot alike. But the strange woman is like a spider that leads foolish young men to be eaten. The Proverbs 30, the Lady Wisdom she's a teacher. She leads she leads simple young men to become wise. And something similar is happening here in Revelation, because on the one side you have the harlot, on the other side you have the church. And the harlot is drunk with blood, and she leads mankind to destruction, and the church does church things. What are some other thoughts about? So I guess the application there is be discerning. Just because something is powerful and attractive doesn't mean that it's actually good. And also, just because something is riding on a beast doesn't mean it's going to have control of that beast forever. How about worldliness? What do you guys think worldliness is? Worldliness, the term never appears in the Bible, but especially John, the same guy who had these visions, talks about worldliness a lot. And the basic idea of worldliness is going along with the crowd, is specifically the people that wonder after the beast, the people that are just amazed and marvel at the beast. Who is like the beast? He's so amazing. That's worldliness. This just kind of being super impressed with the world, going along with the crowd, uncritically accepting popular culture. That's worldliness. And this chapter is about the end of worldliness. So why is worldliness wrong? Why is it a bad idea?
Because we're not of this world.
Yeah, we're not of this world. And what's ultimately the fate of this world? Death, destruction, and specifically to be destroyed by the beast that it's riding. The ugly, hideous power that animates the world, that brings people together, that makes humanity seem so wonderful and powerful and seductive, will ultimately turn on it. So worldliness is a bad idea for a lot of reasons. When we're tempted to trust evil, we should remember that evil will turn on us eventually. What are some other ideas for application? Why is this in the Bible?
To me, it's the progression. So we're here for a limited time. We're here for a season, essentially, or an hour, as the text says. And it may seem difficult at times. organization or anything that has any significant power or control. And as Christians, we're really frustrated with the way that it's going. The Bible says it's supposed to go that way because in order to get to the point of eternity, where we're living in forever in worship to Him, it has to get to that point because we're not in Revelation yet. And so while we can be disappointed and we can try to, enact positive change and we can try to influence and be a light in the world, ultimately we know that the light will be removed so that it can all essentially burn.
Yep.
And so we can be disappointed, but with also the expectation that there's better things coming. It's like you've been somewhere before, you know it's on the other side. So while the journey may be difficult to those that don't know what's at the end, we should be rejoicing because we see the progression and where it's headed.
Yeah, we see where it's heading. And so we can be prepared, and even though we might be disappointed, we're not amazed, right? We're not absolutely shocked. Like, we knew it was coming to us.
And then with that point that Jared made, like, don't be pessimistic then about letting the Lord work through you and, like, being a testimony and being a light. Just because we know it's all going to go downhill doesn't mean that we just say, okay,
Yeah,
riding the roller coaster.
I'm frequently accused of being an optimist, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I think we can be a realist. We can realize, you know what, I can't stop the way of the world. I cannot stop the tide, but I don't have to go with it. I can swim against it. Paula?
Well, I think the banner behind you says it the best, that we are to be the light of the world around us, and just to win those so that they don't get caught up in the world system.
Yeah. And on that note, let's take a couple minutes and start thinking about chapter 18, because I really would like to finish chapter 18 tomorrow. Whenever we do this, Wednesdays. Would somebody read for us 18:4?
And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues."
Okay, that's pretty interesting. So this is describing the world system. This is an angel. Well, actually, it's not necessarily an angel, is it? Where does the voice come from? From heaven. And probably God. Probably more likely God. Well, almost certainly God. Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Chapter 18 is, to say it in the most boring way possible, chapter 18 is about the economic destruction of the world system. Chapter 17 is the sort of political and human cost destruction. Chapter 18 is the economics of it all. And I mean that in the most literal sense, like the shipping is going to be destroyed and the luxury industry is going to be destroyed and all of the economic consequences of this. But before you have that, you have this really compelling call. Come out of her, my people.
Is that before or after the rapture?
That's a good question. That's a really good question, Eric, because if it's after the rapture, that would indicate that there are saved people on earth, right?
144,000 did something.
Something, yeah. What if it's both? Because the world system is active now, right?
But wouldn't the Holy Spirit be gone? Even he's asking them to come out.
Right.
Who would be wooing them or praying for these evil people that are still left?
So Jesus says in John chapter 3 that the Spirit, I'm going to paraphrase, but the Spirit goes wherever he wants to go and does whatever he wants to do. And so it is true that the Spirit of God is not going to be operating in the world the way that he is today. That's not to say that he can't, if he wants to, save people. And there could be people that are being saved. Theoretically, the 144,000 are doing something, or have done something if they haven't been killed yet. Here's why I think it's both. Brother Anthony?
Is the people in 18:4 not the same people from chapter 17?
No. Because chapter 7...
They can't be.
Yeah, chapter 17 exclusively describes the lost. So the people in 18:4 are saved. Now the question is, Are these saved people during the tribulation? Are these saved people before the tribulation? Or is it possible that they're both? Is this call coming down from the future to us? Come out of her, my people. That's where I want us to end tonight. What does it mean that this voice from heaven calls to God's people saying, come out of Babylon? Come out of the world system.
The rapture takes all of those that are saved, so he can't be talking to those people. He's got to be talking to those saved during the rapture.
Certainly, during the tribulation, those saved during the tribulation. What I'm suggesting is that there might be more to this call. Because Babylon exists now. The world system exists now, too. You all live in Babylon. When you turn on the TV and there's an advertisement that tells you that if you buy this cologne or you buy this car, then you're going to suddenly have all your wishes fulfilled. If you drink this, you're going to be happy. If you eat this, you're going to be satisfied. That's the world system. That's Babylon too. You live in Babylon. So think about that call. What does it mean? Come out of Babylon, my people. That's where we're going to end tonight. Read chapter 18. It'll make our discussion even more fruitful. But this has been very good. Thank you all. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for the call to come out. God, thank you that your sovereignty is evident when you turn sinners against sinners. And thank you for painting the world system in such a real and ugly light so that we can understand how hideous she is. God, I pray that you would bless us and that you would give us great discernment and also great humility. Lord, I pray that you would give us wisdom living in the world but not of the world. Help us not to be partakers of her sins. God, help us to be faithful and true. Thank you so much for your love for us, Jesus. Bless us this week. Bless us as we study your word. Help us to know you better and to act on the truth that you reveal to us. In Jesus' name.